So the world has changed a little bit. It's not the same place we've been bodybuilding in recently.
It's crazy.
It is a little crazy. I think there are probably about 500 Instagram accounts, Facebook pages, podcasts, and articles you can read right now about how to train in your home. And we'll probably talk about that a little bit today, but I think the main thing we want to talk about is just honestly just to share how we're feeling, our observations of how people are being, what's been helpful for us and our families, and just kind of honestly just trying to provide some community right now where we're physically forced to not have that kind of community, but we can get that online. So yeah, I think just for the listeners, we had a team meeting just 2 days ago.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. And I don't know how much, we kind of already covered the main business stuff, but we spent most of the time just, I think, being each other's safety blanket. That's what it felt like to me.
Mm-hmm.
I've been just basically processing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so I think that's what we want to try to do in this case. One thing we noticed is people are, understandably a little on edge. We've had some Instagram comments that are just maybe the reaction scale or the harshness to them on seemingly minor things like, hey, maybe you have a 100 to 200 calorie surplus. This is ridiculous. How could you ever measure a 200 calorie surplus? And it's like, oh, hey, I'm stressed out too, homie. Let's just calm our horses, get them whinnies down a little bit, and just have a chat. So I think it's totally understandable. If you are one of those people who reacted to that Instagram post, this is not an indictment. This is me saying, I feel you. I've been on edge too. Mm. So yeah, I don't know how we want to structure this, but I'm going to start with just sharing my recent experience, which I think is it's interesting. So literally a week or two ago, I would say that the way things felt were very different. So that's another thing. What's appropriate? What's okay? What you can joke about? What is insensitive? Or even what you should actually be doing at home or in your country is not only changing almost 24-hour basis, but it's different around the world, and people are reacting because they're afraid and they care, which is great. The caring part, and the fear is understandable. So anyway, in a time that seemed very reasonable to do so, I was heading out to Costa Rica on I think the 11th or the 12th is when I left in the States. And, things were not on lockdown. Costa Rica and New Zealand, where I was leaving from and coming back to and going to, were two of probably the least affected countries in the world. So I felt pretty reasonable about this, even though other things were up in the air with question marks around them as far as should or would you travel there and what's their national status. So anyway, I arrived in Costa Rica, and big shout out to Bro Research and Dr. Ben House for putting this on. But he has basically a fitness retreat that's in Oviedo, which is 3 hours outside of San Jose. And then once you're in Oviedo, you go up this mountain. You need 4-wheel drive to get up it, and it's like this gym, kitchen, and cabins and learning area with a projector and chairs and a table that's out there. And Ben's father, Mr. Kim, is a practicing Zen Buddhist, and he would lead us in meditation, which has a lot of evidence behind it to be really good for clarity, calm, health, and it was awesome. So we had a meditation every day. We ate in a community-style fashion, healthy food 3 times a day, trained, did continuing education, and the participants, they actually had a couple months of education with Ben, and they actually presented. So it was something that they got a lot out of. They had to put a lot of energy into, and we managed to do it despite feeling like the world around us was crumbling, because we had that clarity, we had that community, and we had that ability to react, have our feelings, and then share and express our concerns, and then be present. So that's kind of what I would like to do with this, because that was so invaluable for me. 2 days after I arrived, I woke up to find out that when I returned to New Zealand, any and all travelers have to self-isolate for 14 days. You can do most things. You just need to stay a meter away from everybody, clean your hands, wash your stuff. I'm sleeping in a different room than my wife right now. You know, I've got arrangements with certain gyms and people to train off hours, and I basically, you know, spray everything down with an industrial grade germ killer every time I make a move. But anyway, so that was 2 days in. I was like, oh shit, I'm not sure I would have left had I known that things are changing. Then 2 days later, the Costa Rican government announced, we're going to close our borders. You have until Monday to get out, but the airport's going to be closed to incoming flights on the 18th. And I was like, well, hold on. How am I going to be able to get out if there's no flights coming in, even if the borders are open, if there's no planes? So I moved my flight up a day. A bunch of people started flying out early. That was pretty scary. Got my shit calmed down. And then I flew out after an awesome retreat on the 18th. While I'm in the air on my flight from Houston to Auckland, New Zealand, 14-hour flight, apparently things have changed again. Jacinda Ardern, our prime minister, she announces that now only permanent residents and citizens can enter the country. So this is like 24 hours. Everything's changing. Fortunately, that would go into effect for flights that had left after 11:59 the day I landed. So it didn't matter, but it wouldn't have mattered anyway, at least for me. But man, more than half people on that plane were not permanent residents like I am fortunate enough to be. So now no one's getting in the country. This morning, so now this is Sunday morning for me, Saturday morning for those in the States, there's an article about a Kiwi who is stuck in Costa Rica. Now remember, you can technically get out on Monday, but what was the problem? There are no planes. So yeah, exactly. So it was, that was been a very sobering experience to know that I would possibly be stuck in Costa Rica with my wife literally on the other side of the world, probably till mid-April, until the borders opened again, if I hadn't, you know, left when I had. And just to see how it changed like 4 or 5 times just while I was away for a week. So I was really grateful for that meditation practice. Since I've been home, I've been meditating daily. I've been cooking breakfast for us. We've been going on walks in areas where other people aren't. And I've been finding ways to train. And that's been my experience. And let me just say, I'm really grateful for the people who I do have and the practices I have in place and the training and the mentality I've taken, because I think it's prepared me for this, and it allows me to be hopefully around on things like this to give people maybe some perspective that's helpful. So anyway, that's my story. Someone else can share theirs. How they're doing.
I haven't heard Brad's. I don't recall. Brad.
I think we're probably all of us appropriately quiet, right? I think that's one thing we need to just kind of know is that, I think we're just appropriately introverted. Because, you need to think. There's a lot to process, and it's hard to think when you're scared and probably mad and all the other emotions that go off of that, right? I'm in the healthcare field, so my experience has been a little bit probably warped a little bit because we know a little bit more about what we're dealing with. But like you, Eric, it happened so quick that literally over the course of 36 hours, I guess you might say, I was just unplugged. We were dealing with a blizzard. We were getting slammed with snow. And my concern was basically not paying attention to anything, but clearing snow, getting to my in-laws' house, clearing their snow, making sure that they could get out and that they could get food and, things like that. And then, of course, once I poke my head out of the snow and kind of look at the world, I realize, holy crap, we're not supposed to be leaving our homes. Restaurants are closed. This is closed, et cetera, et cetera. And literally in the span of what felt like a few hours, the world had dramatically changed. And then, of course, we as coaches, as leaders, have people looking to us as far as direction goes. And I check my emails and there's 50 of them. So I feel like more so than anything, that is kind of my primary duty right now, is just almost being people's ear to chew on, their safety valve, giving them space to vent in a way, and then also just some basic leadership. It's okay. We're in this together. We'll figure it out. Here's what we're going to do in the meantime. Jeff was a little bit more proactive than me. He was able to just kind of put some good information out there before he even got his 50 emails. Whereas me, I ended up having to be a little bit more reactive. But so far, I feel like we're in a good spot. I feel like all of the people that look to me for direction have a plan, are doing it, and are moving forward. Because really, that's what it's all about, right? We can't really change the things that have happened to us. But at the same time, what we can change, what we can handle, and more importantly, do something about it, is how it affects us and how we're going about life and how we're moving forward. And I feel like, at least right now, that could change in the next 4 hours, much less 24 hours. I feel like we're in a good spot. I think we're all, adapting and moving forward. And I think that's the most important thing.
I totally agree. Jeff, talk about that proactive thing you did. How did you anticipated some of the needs of and some of the fears that the people you're collaborating with, our athletes, would have, and share with us a little bit about what you put in that video. And then I know you also put it on Instagram, which I thought was great. Talk to us about what went through your head and why and what you said in that video.
If I can go a little bit before that.
Absolutely.
So it was about a few days prior to that, when all this was kind of really starting to hit the fan. I kind of figured, because we always have our annual trip, as coaches, we meet up, and I'm like, okay, this is probably going to get postponed, because I'm like, I had just fears of just actually getting on a plane. Like, I didn't want to be even around anybody that could literally cough or sneeze on me. Like, it was like, okay, I got a family to think about, and I have, 2 kids, wife. And it was just like, okay, I don't want to be away from them while this is kind of unknown. Like, there's this unknown territory, uncertainty. So there's definitely a lot of fear that I was feeling from a personal standpoint. Of course, I don't want to get sick, but I want, my family to get sick. My dad is, he's old. He's 81. He's got underlying health issues, heart issues. My stepmother, she's on the older side too with some issues. So I was just like, I don't want to risk them at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I am a conservative personality, as you guys know, I'm very conservative, and cautious. I'm not an adventurer, so I'm more of in a sense, rock here at my household, where my wife is a little more adventurous. And it's hard for her and she's still having a hard time, I think, dealing with it right now. But yeah, it was just like, I had all that going through my head. I'm like, okay, if I'm feeling this way, then I'm pretty confident that my athletes, at least some of them are just as anxious as I am. And I kind of figured, and usually the weekends I don't work. So I know when we had our team meeting on Saturday, our emergency team meeting, to kind of, say, hey, are we going to do this trip or not? So I kind of figured okay, Monday comes around when I go back to work and get my athlete reports, I know I'm going to get flooded with a lot of questions surrounding just everything, not just bodybuilding, but just life itself. So I was like, okay, let me just kind of throw a video out there and just send it to all my athletes and just kind of give them my perspective. Not so much this is what we should do or shouldn't do, just more like this is what's going through my mind as far as perspective. And my thing is okay, I don't really have control over what's going on in the world. And I've kind of learned over the years that, at least I tried my best to not get myself too wound up or too stressed out with things I don't have control over. Because all I know, if I do that, it's just going to make things worse. It's going to drive my stress levels even higher. And it's not going to be very productive. So I was like, I got to just keep a half glass full type mentality with life itself, but also with bodybuilding, training, all the above. So that's basically the perspective that I wanted to share with my athletes. So it's like, hey, let's focus on the things we can do, not what we can't do. And that was just, across the spectrum of, whether someone's doing contest prep or they're in their off season or what have you. It's just like, hey, let's just focus on what we can do. And let's try to keep in mind too, that what's really important, not so much, hey, I need to hold on to my gains, but hey, your family and friends is priority. And, if we lose progress, so be it. It's temporary. But if we lose the people we love, that's permanent. So to me, that was kind of my mindset. And I wanted to share that with everybody, kind of give some type of maybe comfort with that. And then I kind of just gave some tips that, hey, we're probably not going to lose progress if we're training at home. These are the kind of the principles we can follow, and muscle mass isn't going to really go anywhere. And I kind of just gave the reminder, hey, I trained in Mexico for a week with a 5-gallon water jug, and when I came back, I was okay. So that was kind of more or less the gist of the video. And I had one I had a few respond saying, I really needed that. It was really good to hear that. And I actually had one say, hey, you need to put that on your guys' YouTube channel or put it out on Instagram or something, because I think a lot of people can benefit from that. So I edited a little bit to kind of hit more of the masses. There was a couple things I kind of left out just because it was pertained more to our athletes. But it was definitely well received on Instagram. I got a lot of good comments on it. There was no negativity from it. At least I didn't get any negative comments. So I think what I realized after that was, even though I have my own like insecurities of the unknown and things like that, that it was not only help like for me to be positive and have that mindset and to put that out there in the world, it was also helping me too, because of course I like to help people. So if I see that I'm helping people, it makes me feel good. So in a way, it was kind of my escape from reality of what's going on. So when I'm not on Instagram, or I'm not talking to you guys and I'm having to deal with this stuff the other 22 hours a day, it's like, yeah, you kind of think like, okay, how's my family going to be? How's the economy going to be? Am I going to be able to pay my bills? Making sure I'm taking care of the family. They're not getting sick. I'm like bugging the shit out of my wife, like, cause she's like so anxious. Like even today, like it's totally intensified from the last time we've kind of talked, even more so. So it's like, she's this morning like, hey, I'm going to go get some dirt so we can plant some flowers in the backyard. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, really? You're going to go risk just to go get some dirt at Lowe's? I'm like, really? But I had to stop myself and just say, you know what? Okay, just make sure you're safe and leave it at that, because that's her escape. Mm-hmm. And I think from a mental standpoint, like if I'm on her all the time, like trying to confine her even more than, let's say, what they're trying to confine us, it's going to drive her bonkers. And that's the thing, is like, I worry about her overall like mental health with this, because I don't know how long this is going to go on for. So it's more or less, I'm just trying to keep some normalcy in a kind of an unknown environment. And that's why I'm encouraging at least the athletes I'm working with, and I'm sure some of you guys are probably doing the same. Hey, you still have goals, whether there's shows going on or not. Let's pretend that they kind of are. If that gives some of them peace of mind, that's fine. But I've had some where just like, hey, Jeff, it's not a good time to prep, or it's not a good time to do this. And I'm like, you know what? That's 100% fine as well. So whatever each person is really wanting to do, then I'm just supporting them 100% with whatever they feel is right for them. So that's kind of how I've been processing it for the most part up to this point. And I'm definitely very grateful, because I do have a home gym. And I know it's like, I even feel guilty posting some of I told you guys at our meeting, I feel guilty posting them, because here I am with a nice leg press, and a lot of weight and all this. And there's people out there just training with bands or body weight. But at the same time, I'm like, well, there's some people that do, that's maybe their escape, like watching me train. That can be escape. So to me, I'm like, you know what? I need to just let go of worrying about the people who might say, what are you doing? This in this time right now, why are you doing that? Well, there's people out there that can definitely help. So I'm trying to just be aware of what I'm posting. So like if I'm, like I mentioned to you guys earlier too, I posted like my normal training, but I'm also posting like, hey, with a water bottle, this is what I was doing in Mexico. So just trying to be useful to different perspectives, the best that I can. So, but I'll let someone else talk, but that's basically the gist of it.
I love it, dude. Something that both you and Brad said was, you said the word leadership. And I think unfortunately, sometimes we have examples or images of leadership as being overbearing, opinionated, telling people what to think, giving opinions rather than listening. And I think what you guys both talked about was being present and being there, being someone's ear, like you said, Brad, and Jeff, like you said, giving that acceptance of what people needed to do in their situation. And I think that's what real leadership is to me. It's, especially from a coach's perspective, it's being there for the athlete, helping the athlete make sense of all the noise in their head and the noise outside, and come to terms with what they want to do. Like, I think one of the posts we had on our Instagram was about, hey, keep prepping. And that probably wouldn't be something we would post today. Just like you said, it's appropriate for some, it's not appropriate for others. And we know that people are really on edge right now. And, you know, we have people like, hey, should you be in a deficit? And should you be risking your immune system? What if you're really lean? And, you know, like, slow down. Hey, it's no different than if you get sick and any other time. Like, you know, this is an unfortunately widespread disease that does put people at risk, and we need to control it and be cognizant of it. But we also don't prep at all, because we might get the flu or we might get anything. So I think, like you said, Jeff, it's an opportunity for someone to potentially maintain structure and keep a goal. I remember when my father took his life in my 2009 prep, one of the things that really kept me sane and allowed me to have an anchor in a storm was I kept prepping. I did a powerlifting meet the next day. I did a show in April, May, June, July, August, and September that year. I don't recommend that necessarily, but if someone told me, who was my athlete, that, you know, this is one of the few things keeping me sane, it's the rock in my life right now, I would 100% understand. I wouldn't judge them or tell them what to do, because that's not leadership. I think leadership is listening to someone and is helping them figure out what's best for them. That's our whole purpose as coaches, you know, that kind of pastoral care. And that's, I think that's hard to come by right now, because everyone seems to have an opinion, you know, like fear and anger lead to, you know, a lot of noise and not a whole lot of listening. So I think that's all I wanted to say. I think those are some really key points that you both said. But yeah, I'll shut up. I've been talking a lot. Go ahead, Brad.
Eric, if I could just chime in, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I was thinking about our podcast before we got on here, and I was actually processing how I was going to respond to an athlete. And on more than one occasion, I've coached athletes in the past that they needed something in their life to be in control. Like, all these people had tragedies like you had in 2009. And I mean, let's face it, ultimately, tragedies a lot of times will make us realize that we're not in control of anything. This is, we're just, you know, going through life and trying as best we can to get traction, but we're not in control of anything. And when you're suddenly faced with something that makes you realize that, having one thing to actually be in control of, and in your case, prep, and then the people that I was kind of thinking of, their prep, they could be in control of the food they ate. They could be in control of how much of the food was there. They could be in control of their training. That was the one thing that got them through, you know, that tragedy. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that was one of the things I really wanted to talk about was, let's face it, some of us just need grounding in some way, shape, or form when everything is kind of being realized on us all at once in one time frame in a matter of hours. Folks, you don't have control over any of this. And I'm so glad that you brought that up. But we need to hand the microphone to our fourth person here and hear from him, because we don't usually have all four of us on a podcast like that. And I love me some Birdo perspective.
Absolutely.
It's like the Wu-Tang Clan today. Everyone's trying to get a verse in. But like you guys, I've been very like just pro listening. And with my athletes, that's exactly what they need more often than not, because in their own environment, they're usually a leader in some way, you know? So it's like, hey, Pops gets to freak out with me for like, you know, 5-10 minutes or what have you. And it's just the bodybuilding part, but at least we get to sort that bit out, you know? And yeah, and that like actually started in my case. It was the week before the Arnold because I have some athletes out in Italy, and it just over there it was a bit more accelerated than here. And actually, so I was supposed to go to the Arnold. And then I decided, you know what? I'm always going to the Arnold. I think I'm going to do something. And I felt guilty about that because my powerlifting family, that's who I go there for most of the time. It's not necessarily all the like bodybuilding marketing shenanigans that are going on inside the expo, but it's the Arnold and the and USAPL Nationals where I get to catch up with that side of the family tree. And I felt guilty initially. I'm like, man, that means some of these people I'm really only going to get to see like once. But I was standing in line to get into my basketball game that I was super excited to get into. Like we were like 5 minutes out from them opening the doors. And I look at my phone and it's like, yeah, the Arnold's done. And I didn't think much of it because I'm like, hey, what is the crowd?
Spectators.
Yeah, for spectators. Yeah. The expo part was done. And I was like, I didn't think about it this way, but I'm like, shoot, that's really but nevertheless, it's like 60,000 people like that you get every day, you know, coming in and out, which is about the same as like a lot of sporting events or close to it. So it didn't dawn on me that if the Arnolds, like if they're doing that with the Arnold, shoot, all these other things it's going to roll over into other places where people meet up. And this basketball game that I'm about to see, well, there's not going to be any more of those like here shortly. So I just thought it's like, okay, this is just how they want to do things just to be safe because there's just not a whole lot of foot traffic in Columbus. I don't know, but I didn't think it would lead to all this basically. So I did that, and then I went to New York, which I was traveling, enjoying the crap out of that, and like I was enjoying it, but I was kind of taking it for granted in hindsight. I'm like, man, can't believe just like 2 or so weeks ago I was just moving around, doing what I wanted, like engulfed in a sea of people, and everyone was acting totally differently. And yes, it's basically been since I've gotten back that like it just got to a certain point where I'm just like, okay, we just don't know what to expect on this day, on that day, on Wednesday, on Thursday. So we're making like no plans. We have no expectations. The peak of this was this was the last day I had access to a gym. I was warming up on my squats. I was going to build up to my heavy single for the day. I was feeling really good, so I was super excited about that. And somehow word got to the owner of that gym that the gyms need to close now. So I was like, my warm-ups were starting to get heavy. And they're like, yeah, you can take that last warm-up, but after that, we got to close down. So I took that warm-up, and then I went over to another gym and like literally did the next load that was scheduled after that and finished my squat day there. I had about 2 hours to train there, and it was just so surreal. Like a lot of people who usually don't talk a whole lot, I guess everyone, because they had told us, I think it was going to be a month, 30 days. 30 days without restaurants, without gyms, without the non-essentials. Everyone was, in that moment, like very polite, not on edge. I guess everyone knew that things were just going to be different from this point on for a little bit. And I think everyone realized just how much they took for granted the fact that, hey, some days you're tired after work. But you come in here and you make it happen. And sometimes it's a bit of a nuisance and not all days are great, but damn, we're not going to get to do this for a while. And a lot of these people that maybe you don't necessarily talk to, it's like, hey, bro, I'm going to miss nodding at you as we cross paths on the way to the water fountain. So it's been, different day to day. And with me, it hasn't been too much of an issue. I guess I'm already kind of looking at what things are going to look like on the other side. And man, tough times will make you stronger. And I feel a lot of us are going to learn a whole lot from this. I think the few high profile peeps, some of the celebrities out there who have like the Tom Hanks, the Kevin Durant's, they're like, hey, I got the Rona too, man. It kind of put it in perspective that, hey, we're all just humans here. We like Brad said, we really have control over nothing at the end. So those moments of peace, those moments that you perhaps in hindsight take for granted, walking by that person on the way to the water fountain, that's your bro that you see all the time, and you ask him what he's lifting, that you want to be like him, and he tells you he wants to be like you, and you all nod at each other. It's like all these little things that you take for granted that that we should take a moment and perhaps appreciate the peace when it's there, because it gets interrupted quite often, and that's just something that I've come to realize after being on this planet for what is almost 4 decades now, is that, it's like, enjoy your peace, because right around the corner, something's bound to happen. But nevertheless, people figure it out. It's another form of progressive overload of sorts. I'm sure you can say this, Eric, like with Yo Pops, like that made you stronger at the end. I mean, it sucked, man. But it shaped you to be the person that you are today in many ways. So same thing with this, man. One thing my lifters are getting right now is they're really brushing up on their fundamentals, and we're getting to see how much of the principles that I've really tried to instill in their programs, like how much do they really understand. So it's been a cool little test. We've been figuring it out, and we've been getting better day by day, even though things keep changing day by day. But yeah, we're here, man, swimming upriver, but we're all making it.
Man, that's really well said. I think the main thing that you said that really struck a chord with me is you talked about being grateful and being in the moment. And that's, it's funny, like so many sectors of the fitness community will put our ancestors on a pedestal. We want to live like Paleo Man, or we want to, it's all the modern diseases of obesity or all these things, and processed foods and the obesogenic environment. And I think in many sectors, we look at the quote unquote good old days with kind of this rosy-eyed glasses because of the more simple food, the more simple lifestyle. But I think something that we probably don't think about our truly old ancestors was that they didn't live in the future, because they couldn't. Every day you had to go out and do what you need to do to survive at a certain stage of humanity. And one thing that you guys have all said is we don't have control over the future. Right now, more than anything else, I think the realization is that things are changing on a day-to-day basis, and in a way that really matters. It's not like someone at the gym keeps moving the dumbbells around and equipment disappears, or the grocery store doesn't have the same Greek yogurt. No, I got to switch to Chobani from Faye. No, we're talking like we may be under martial law. You may not be able to fly. You may have family members or friends who are in lockdown or, God forbid, ill. And I think, which when my father took his own life, and that was something I did not see coming. It made me realize just how little control we have over many things, how much really all that we can deal with is what's in front of us right now. So, one of the things I did once that 14-day self-isolation ruling came out of New Zealand was I had to message 8 different people about my whole travel schedule. For those who don't know, I do a lot of speaking engagements. I'm very grateful that I get to go around the world and talk about bodybuilding and have someone put me up in a country I'd never been before and connect with people who I would never have met if I hadn't started lifting weights. But that's pretty much looking very uncertain. And I know, like, at the very least, we had to cancel our Austin trip for 3DMJ. So, I had to send out like 8 of the same emails saying, hey, if I think we should reconsider some of these seminars. And, it's very much a blessing in disguise, I think, that the future is uncertain. And there's a saying that I learned as a very young child because I had a parent who was in recovery most of my life. So I grew up and I got like different days, months, years clean. And I would, spend time hanging out at AA meetings when I was a little kid while my mom was doing her thing and getting her years. And one of the sayings that is very common in the 12-step community is that if you have a foot in tomorrow and a foot in yesterday, you're taking a shit on the present. And I think it's a great saying, and it's something that I think everyone can relate to. And what this is forcing us to do is accept the fact that really all we have is what's in front of us. So that kind of clarity and presence is something that we lose. Like, we're kind of chasing the treadmill of or the hamster wheel of social media, or thinking about our plans, our show in July, my speaking engagement in September, our trip in March, the next thing we got to launch for the lifting library, our next paycheck, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not saying you don't need a plan for the future, but I think one of the biggest things we can learn from our ancestors is that there's a certain purpose, clarity, and a lack of stress, and almost a lack of emotion or fear when you just have to deal with what's in front of you. And I think that's something that, at least for me, that's why I have to stay in the gym during these times, is because my form of spirituality, my form of meditation is the iron. When I get down and get ready and go through whatever I need to do for a heavy lift or a hard set of 20 or a snatch or something that's complex, I have to clear my mind or just focus on the few cues if I'm still in that, kind of intentional phase of learning a movement. And I think that's a gift, but I think a lot of people are going to learn how to do that in a different environment and how to bring that into their lives on more to hour, day to day, minute by minute basis. And I think that's probably one of the biggest gifts we're getting out of this personally.
Yeah, isn't that such a great feeling when, like, at least for just a few seconds, you quickly assess how things feel while you're underneath the bar, and your world is like the 2 centimeters in front of your eyeballs just for a split second. That's something I've really been kind of stressing to each of my clients while we're doing alternative training, is that, you know what? Just take one rep at a time. Just focus on one rep. The other reps that you did are in the past, the ones you have not done yet. Assess that rep. If you're ready to go, dive into the next one. Assess that rep, dive into the next one. And that is such a great feeling when just for a few moments, your world is like 2 seconds in front of you. That is it. And like Berto was saying, I think that's a fundamental that we sometimes lose if we can make this about bodybuilding for a second. I think that's something that we sometimes lose when we're making plans of the next period of training, or we're even just in that set chasing a certain amount of repetitions. I got to get to 12 or what have you. But staying in that moment can even be more so defined in those like little seconds that are truly what we're doing and what truly matter, like right now.
That's well said. I mean, I've got an idea for the name of the podcast now. and you'll find out if you get to this point and you're listening to a podcast that's not named this, but I'm going to throw it out there. I kind of like the idea: coronavirus, 1 rep at a time. I think we got a fair chance of that being the title. Of course,
we're close. We're close.
We'll decide. We're close. It's at least similar. You'll be listening to something close to what I just said.
On a more serious note, no, I like listening to you guys. Like, I came on here thinking like, okay, yeah, we're gonna give some support for everybody listening. But like, man, just for me, just sitting back and listening to you guys, it's been pretty therapeutic, and it's giving me more clarity, but also it's having me reflect back a little bit deeper. Like when my mom passed, something that I'm not too proud of is that my mom used to call me like a lot, and training's super important to me. And she always called during my training times. So, of course, the phone would ring. I'm in my gym training, and I see the caller ID pop up, Mom. I'm like, I'll call her back. So when she passed, I remember in my home gym, and I would see the phone ring, I would look at it and go, that's not my mom on the caller ID. And it's just kind of this, like what's going on now. It's like, for me, I have to really, like Eric's saying, like, and Brad and all you guys, like stay in the moment and really think about, again, like what you can and can't control. And to me, it's like, okay, family is most important for me. So I think the one thing I can take positive from this situation is that I'm really kind of embracing them even more so. And like, even like today, I was out in the backyard before coming on, just kicking the soccer ball with Ethan and just like looking at him going, I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. Not just with this virus, but I can get hit by a car or something, God forbid, nothing like that happens. But it's like, you just don't know what's in front of you. So it's just like when things like this go on, that's on the more serious side, I tend to appreciate, even on a deeper level, just everything around me. And going back to bodybuilding, like Brad said, like, so with my training, it might seem like people, because I've gotten this before, people look at, you don't, like, in a sense, don't take it so serious, or I'm a little more relaxed with progressions and gains and things. It's because I come from that perspective. And to me, like, I almost look at this as like, and again, this is coming from someone who has their own home gym, so hopefully it doesn't get taken out of context. But to me, it's like an opportunity for people to learn more on their own, in a sense, and not rely, because like you said, we can't, like right now, if your environment's totally changed the way you train, you don't have access to all this nice equipment. You don't have access to all the loading that you were able to do like that. Now it's like, okay, now it's an opportunity for you to figure out more about yourself. You might have to train harder than you used to train before, because maybe now you got to go from like 6 to 8 rep range. Now you got to train 30 reps to get the stimulus, and that shit's hard. It's demanding. Like I did that shit in Mexico, man. I thought I was gonna throw up the first day doing it, but by the end of the week, I could tell I adapted to it. So I'm like, okay, and I found clarity afterwards. Like, oh, okay, I can actually train with a 5-gallon water jug. And like Eric told me before, hey, Jeff, if you're training in the 15 rep range or above, make sure you go at least to failure, at least one set. So I'm like, okay, as long as I'm covering that principle, muscle ain't going to go nowhere, especially if I'm staying on top of diet, staying on top of all the other things I need to do. So to me, it's like it's an opportunity for a lot of people to learn more about themselves. And I even had, like yesterday, I did a Q&A on Instagram. And it's like some of the questions I was getting, it was like, you can tell that the questions are coming from insecurity, because you're still used to what you were doing in the past, but you can no longer do that any longer. So, I can't, it's like one question is like, how do I progress on push-ups? How much volume I should be doing? I'm like, just, if you could do more, great. Than yesterday, great. But if you can't, you can't. It's no big deal. I mean, just accept the fact that right now you're breathing and you're able to move. You're able to move your body. And could you imagine if you couldn't move at all, or you can't train at all? Like, how would you feel then? So even if you let's say you lose a little bit of progress, let's say you do see some atrophy or strength loss, it's temporary. Again, go back to it's temporary. Once you get, and maybe this is how things are going to be in the future. Who knows? We don't know, but we can't live in the past. Like, you just got to keep moving forward. And to me, again, it's like an opportunity to learn more about yourself. So that's kind of like
really well said.
That's kind of my thoughts. That's like, so even before this happened, that's kind of been my mindset around training for a while now, for the last few years, is that, in my opinion anyways, I think when you learn how to, like, you learn to master yourself and you learn how to be reactionary to your environment, that's when you become a very good bodybuilder, in my opinion.
Yes. Man. So, you said some goods, Jeff, and I'm going to take that ball and run with it.
You do it, because your brain is like even on a higher level. So you go for it while I drink some water. Because we're supposed to drink a lot of water right now, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. You're following health guidelines. You're a great example to the people. So Berto and I, just another awesome opportunity that came from this. I was home. I was not having to do some work that wasn't there. I saw Berto was doing an Instagram live. I jumped on with him and we talked to a lot of people. We had a lot of questions about how do you deal with training right now. And this is a very understandable response, and it's a very reasonable question. And preparing for the unknown and the current situation is something that I think is commendable. But there are basically, there's two reasons to ask these questions. One is to actually, have a collective brain here to figure out what's the best way to deal with the reality. How do we optimize the situation given our constraints as serious athletes? More power to you. The other reason, which is probably more poignant, just as common and often interlaid with the other, but gives us an indication of where our mental state is at, is, hey, tell me I'm going to be okay. I need a safety blanket. And that's okay. That's normal. We're all there. Tell me this, that I'm not going to lose everything I fought for. Tell me this way that I define myself, that I express myself, maybe even unhealthily, that this is the way I see how I have worth, my body, my physique, my physical capabilities. Tell me I'm going to keep hold of this. And that's one way to prepare for the unknown. There's another way, though, and it's a more challenging way. It's a more uncomfortable way, but it's something that tells you even more about yourself, is instead of finding someone to tell you it's going to be okay, take a second and imagine the worst case scenario. Imagine you literally couldn't train. Imagine you, like Jeff said, you were paralyzed. Imagine you couldn't lift, you couldn't train, and imagine no matter what you did, you were going to lose muscle and you were going to lose your strength. This is kind of a Stoic philosophy. This is meditating on the worst case scenario. Something we did, and I'm really grateful for, while I was in this Costa Rican retreat, is there's a Zen Buddhist meditation where you meditate on a candle. And you light the candle, and that signifies birth. And at the end of the meditation, you cover it. That signifies death. And the time spent in the meditation, you can clear your mind, or you can also meditate on death. And I thought about the people in my life now who are alive, what it would be like to lose them. I thought about what the people in my life who are alive would be like to lose me. I thought about my cat, who's currently battling cancer, what it would be like to not have him. I thought about the death of my father. I thought about the death of my relevance, what it would be like to be at breakfast with my wife, and we're in our 70s, and me to say, I've done so much great work in the bodybuilding community, and I've tried to help people, and I've done my part, but I feel like I'm an outsider now for the place that has given me my home for 50 years at that point. And that was all really scary stuff to think about. And we don't normally like to think about those things. But it taught me a lot about what are my fears and what do I value. And if you do that, if you're thinking about right now, if you're in a state of panic or fear or discomfort with the scenario you're in, and your training feels like something really intrinsic is being taken away from you, follow that line. Follow that thread back. Does that mean that your self-worth is in your training? Does that mean your self-identity is as a bodybuilder? Are you more than that? Do you have other values? Are there other things you could be doing? How do you see yourself? What's really important to you? I think, Jeff, I'm sure it's not fun when you're training in your garage to see your phone go off and think of your mom, but it also probably gives you a sense of connection to her. There's another really good saying that, grief is painful, but grief is the inverse to the love we felt for someone we lost. If someone died and you're like, whew, thank God, didn't have any grief for that person, that's tragic. That means you didn't actually have a connection. There was nothing to grieve. So, put yourself through the simulation of the grief of not having this thing we care about that connects us, the iron. And consider what that means. I think that's a much more permanent safety blanket. If you can walk yourself just in a controlled environment in your imagination through the worst case scenario, and you come out on the other side and you go, you know what, if everything crumbled around me, I would still have this, I would still be alive, I would still have these values or these beliefs. Man, that puts everything into a lot more perspective. It gives you more clarity and you can make better decisions. So don't just search for the safety blanket. I think search for that worst case and meditate on that. I think there's value in going on both sides of it.
I knew you'd go on a higher level. That was awesome.
Thanks, Jeff. With that said, I think we can stay deep if we want, but I do think we do have the opportunity to have four brains together right now. We've been programmed for a lot of people. I actually just had to write a new block for Bryce, who is, we just found out World is getting postponed. It was planned to be in Belarus in June, but as we know, Europe isn't doing too hot. June isn't that far away. So I kind of had to create a bridge cycle for him. And Bryce is also fortunate that he's got a lot of equipment at home, but it's basically just bar, rack, bench, plenty of plates. I mean, between him and Natalie, they're going to need a lot of plates. Those are two world champions in the same home. But he's also got some bands, and he's got a kettlebell up to 25. And, it's interesting to see a high-level powerlifting coach, a world champion, multi-time national champion, and him to say, hey, Eric, what are plyo push-ups? And it just goes to show you that, like, we get in our little pockets of information. We know how to do what we know how to do. And this is a great opportunity to expose to other stuff. So I sent Bryce a video and I said, hey, basically your plyo push-ups, you're just doing a push-up, but you're getting air. And I want you to do reps until you can no longer get air. Now you've gotten a certain amount of fatigue. Because if I tell a dude who can bench 500 to do push-ups to failure, that's just kind of torture, But if I tell him, hey, throw your body off the ground as heavy as you can.
He's going to do 5,000 push-ups.
Exactly, But if he's getting air with his 105 muscular physique, now the rep count comes down, and that's a nice way to make every rep generate more force, which might have a little more application to a powerlifter. Sissy squats. Tell you what, I don't know many people of any strength level who could do more than 15 or 20 of those done right. Getting up onto the balls of your toes, holding on to something, going real deep. It's basically like a closed chain leg extension. Those are some things that I programmed for Bryce. Of course, you guys can think of all the regular stuff. Like if you just have an Alico, like an ER rack and a bar, you can set it up to squat height for a 7-footer and do chins off that. You can do barbell rows. You can do an overhead press, bench. You got your big four for the upper body right there. Of course, barbell curls. Off the bench, you can do a pullover extension, lat tricep combo. You get all that in, and you also think about, good mornings, RDL, any kind of hip hinge, hip thrust, shoot, and of course squats. Hey, I don't know if anyone's ever done like a pause at the bottom, single leg calf raise just off a block. I don't know many people who are getting more than 15, 20 reps there if they actually go to failure. And that's everything. Mm-hmm. You just got yourself every single movement if you have a weight set. But like you said, Jeff, not everyone necessarily has the luxury of having a weight set. I think a lot of us are fortunate in that way. But I think at least for the goal of bodybuilding, you can keep, if not gain muscle purely with body weight training, spinning out how creative you are. I'll share some other cool ideas I've had. So BFR bands are something I used to travel with when I couldn't, if I was going to a place that was a little more remote, or if the schedule was a little more congested, like if the host wanted to take us around a lot. I have done just BFR wrap my legs and just done lunges until I couldn't do them anymore. That's not fun. Just to put it out there.
No, it's not.
Yeah. BFR lunges to near failure is definitely a cardiovascular workout, but it will get a massive glute. Man, my glutes were cramping, quads were cramping. If you are someone who can do sissy squats and you're kicking ass on them and you can do more than 20, or you're getting your breath is the limiting factor, BFR those bad boys. That rep count will drop. Another one, you can do glute bridge with band around your knees, single leg with BFR bands, and your quads, hamstrings start fatiguing early. Your glutes will get lit up. Push-ups with BFR bands, triceps fatigue early. You will get a ton of chest activation. Inverted rows. You find something to hang off of and pull. Same thing. You can BFR that up too and have the biceps fatigue early and get a lot more lat and mid-back. I truly, honestly, I'll be the safety blanket for a moment to everybody. If you've got BFR wraps and just a house, you could not even just maintain muscle. I think you could grow. I legitimately think you could. being in a pike position and doing handstand, or not even full handstand push-ups, but pike position push-ups, progress it to handstand eventually with your feet on the wall. I think Steve Taylor just put out on his Instagram a video of him doing that.
Yep.
Yeah, there's so much you can do. And there are so many examples of back in the day, dudes who did hand balancing, calisthenics, didn't really have any access to weights with just incredible physiques. People who, if they had an Instagram today, would be accused of being fake natties, because which we know is impossible, because there was not anabolic steroids, and they didn't even have a gym. We're talking just hand balancing.
Yeah.
Hey, they got Bobby on nattyornot.com, by the way.
Which just goes to show you the ridiculousness of people.
Yeah.
Oh, Bobby Pandora. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about, right, Berto?
Yeah, and the final, so like the conclusion was like, well, let me tell you guys, it really comes down to the fact that your testosterone levels aren't what they used to be, like compared to like men of way before. So that's the news. I'm like, damn, you guys really just like
you need
fish
to believe
for
that hard.
Whatever. Yeah, yeah.
The crazy thing is, I wonder how they know what testosterone levels were in 1890 when you could not measure testosterone in 1890. When if you looked in a dictionary, the word after test was not testosterone. It was some other word, because the word was not invented yet, because we didn't know that testosterone was real. So no, we don't know they had higher testosterone in 1890. What's wrong with you?
Yeah. I've even seen people say, well, obviously he was eating bull testicles to increase his testosterone. And Eric, you just debunked that point.
I would have played along with that one and then just have them go eat the balls and just
Good luck thinking that eating the semen of animals is going to make you jacked. Like that's absolutely not the way it works. I mean, if you had a chemical laboratory and you could extract certain things from bull testicles, you could make something that therefore you would have to inject. But eating animal testicles not going to make you huge. Sorry, I don't know why you might have thought that in the first place, but man, I'm getting a little off topic, but for real.
Eric, I want to kind of expand upon what you were talking about there and all your great ideas that, to be honest with you, I hadn't even thought about. But like some people are just kind of asking me, okay, I just want to make one purchase that will kind of get my home gym started here. What would you recommend that would be? And Jeff and I are pretty much on the same line with this. I said, you know what? Get yourself just a couple of dumbbells or a couple of kettlebells. Get yourself, if you get yourself 2 25-pound kettlebells, it's literally 2 handles on a home gym. And I can teach you your conditioning. I can make the whole program. I can make it progress, and really it's all that you need. And I'm going to hand it off to Jeff here because, like I said, him and I are very much in the same opinion, and whenever he says, I'm going to agree with. But that's kind of my feeling. A couple of dumbbells or a couple of kettlebells, you got a bodybuilding gym. I really kind of feel that way.
That was my thought. Like when I sent that mass email to all my athletes was like, hey, if we got to start training at home, just buy yourself some adjustable dumbbells. You could replicate any movement pattern with dumbbells. And if they're adjustable, well, that gives you even more versatility for loading and things like that. And I even I was doing a little bit of research this morning and I was like, hey, weighted vest. So adjustable dumbbells and a weighted vest. Okay, now I can do even heavier, like squatting with dumbbells, lunges, deadlift with dumbbells, RDLs. Like I could actually load these things even more so. And then you think about dumbbells, even if you don't even have a bench, you could do floor pressing.
Mm-hmm.
You could do 1-arm rows. You could do two-arm rows. You can row, you could row high, row low. If you could target, certain points of your back, the way you row. Curl, it's endless. I can go on and on, but I think the point's made with dumbbells. You, like Brad said, it's basically, that's a gym right there. And then I think about Eric, how you were going back and looking at all those guys, from the early, late 1800s, early 1900s. These guys are jacked and they don't have the equipment that we got nowadays. So I think it's just, more or less, I think a lot of people, because you're used to doing certain things a certain way and you've never been exposed to something different, or you're not aware of my poor ex-wife takes a beating for this, but married for 20 years, that's what I thought my normal was. When I got removed from the situation, I'm like, oh, okay, this is what real marriage is. So it's kind of the same thing here. Like you're just getting removed from this fancy equipment. If you go to the bare bones basics, you get a little creative, you're going to get efficient and effective workouts. So to me, it's like that was like the go-to was like, hey, if you guys can get some adjustable dumbbells. And what's interesting is a lot of these things are getting sold out now because obviously everybody's buying a lot of equipment right now.
I legitimately think like if you couldn't get your hands on dumbbells, BFR reps and body weight is legitimately all you need. I mean, you can just hold on to something and do pistols. Like, I think that you'd have like hip thrusts, single leg BFR hip thrusts, sissy squats, pistol squats. You know, support yourself, put a block under your heel if you don't have the mobility, pike push-ups, plyo push-ups, a inverted row, and a chin off a door. Just put like the towel on top. You've got literally everything, you know, and you don't need BFR bands. Those are like $15 and with the buckle and they're nice, but knee wraps, if you got an old pair of those hanging around, long enough wrist wraps I've used, even an ace bandage, if you wrap it up tight and double it over, those work. Don't do something thin. Don't tourniquet yourself, please. But BFR wraps, just something like at least a couple inches wide, you can get almost everything. Legitimately, it's that's something I've really enjoyed about travel and injury. It's the silver lining of you have to get creative. And you can tell, like, some of the questions that Alberto and I got on that Instagram live that we shared, you could tell there was people who were asking questions before they'd done anything, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm all about, like, planning. But I tell you what, in 2 weeks, half the damn planet is going to be an expert at bodyweight training.
Yeah. Yeah. They're going to learn so much from this and not having their first world gravity, basically.
You know, my prediction was, I forget who I said. Oh, I think I said this to Ishak. And I'm like, okay, here's my prediction. We're going to realize, like, science is important, don't get me wrong. But we're going to learn, like, oh, we can actually keep progress even if things aren't, quote unquote, optimal. And people are going to start learning to become more practical because they're going to be forced to do something that they're not used to. It's going to challenge them and do things other ways. So it's like you said, Eric, the questions I'm getting is you can tell like it's more of insecurity because they're not doing the same things they used to do. And that's my whole point earlier was like, it's okay not to know the answers. It's okay. You're not going to, let's say, make quote unquote perfect progress, but you're going to probably learn a lot more how to bob and weave your way through things. And that goes outside of the realm of bodybuilding too. It's life in general. So
my sunny side up eggs have gotten better in the last couple days. Tell you what, getting the timing right, you get the heat right. You can make sure you don't have runny white, but you still got a little bit of runny yolk. I'm cooking breakfast every morning now, man.
Yeah, that's good. But I mean, even for me, I like to have things planned and set and know ahead of time. Like, who doesn't want to know ahead of time what's going to be optimal? But life doesn't always work that way. So to me, it's like, that's what I try to encourage my athletes even before all this even hit was like, even when I program, it's like, it's okay if we don't plan perfectly. Like it's okay. I in a sense want some of my athletes to mess up as long as it's not unsafe. Because to me, they're going to learn more that way versus me always feeding them fish constantly. They're only going to learn how to follow something that's given to them. So I think, again, to me, the way I look at it is it's in a sense, could be very enlightening for people that they're getting out of their comfort zone. Because I think we learn better when we're out of our comfort zone. And at least I have anyways. And basically before meeting you guys, that was me, like always in a comfort zone, gravitating to one style of training all the time because that was a comfort zone, scared to try other things because no, this thing's the thing or it's the way I've been doing it. It's worked, so I don't want to try anything different. So, and that's how I've grown over the last 10 years as a bodybuilder in person is when you guys challenged me when I first met you guys. And so it's just kind of like evolved over time with, and even outside the gym. It's not just in the gym. It's like with life in general.
Well,
like
Jeff, you had moments, remember when you played tennis, like more than bodybuild? I'm sure your physique probably like kind of maybe hung there, maybe backslided a bit, but
not really.
Cool thing about this.
No, what's interesting is that, because at the time I was playing tennis 2 or 3 times a week, playing basketball 2 or 3 times a week, and I'd weight train twice. And I just basically, it was like, I was doing like, at the time, it was like Mentor style training. So I was doing like 2 sets per exercise, but my muscle mass didn't go anywhere.
All
Because I
right.
was still
All right.
eating, I was playing a lot. I was very active, but I actually was eating a lot more food because I was just
See.
hungrier because I was active. But I didn't see my physique regress.
See, I've backslided before, and like one thing you learn is like, it comes back at some point,
Well, yeah.
and it's and I've seen people who have been in good shape like come back from it, and it's literally amazing. It's so cool sometimes, and I'm not suggesting people stop training, but it's like noob gains times 10 because you actually know what you're doing now. It's so whatever you might lose, maybe because of your situation, there might be 1 or 2 things you can't reach. Like it's crazy how quickly all that stuff comes back.
That was me. That was me when I stopped training for 4 months.
That's
When-
right.
Right before Ethan was born. And I remember Eric was kind of irritated with me because, Jeff, don't tell me you couldn't train at least once a week. And I think if I would have trained once a week, full body, and hit it hard, I probably would have maintained all my muscle mass.
Bro, when you came to one of those meetings, we were supposed to compete together. I'm like, don't do this to me, Jeff. Like, you were so thin. I was like, I'm about to like smash on this dude, and it's not even gonna feel right. And then literally, like 3 months later, you come. It's another in-person meeting. I'm like, what the fuck? he's all back.
Well, I think that's what's important right now is like, because I mean, yeah, we're in scary times, but I think like what I learned, like what Eric taught me was like, hey, even though your focus, let's say your focus is elsewhere, you can still have a little bit of focus to keep you grounded with the other thing. So that's what I learned from that. And yeah, I atrophied. Like literally, that's how I'm very confident. Like when I'm talking to people, either my athletes or people online, hey, even if we're training once or twice a week, and if it's intense enough, you got a decent amount of volume there, your muscle isn't going anywhere. The only thing you're going to see, the only way you're going to see atrophy, stop training. Stop training for a month, then come back and tell me how worried you were about not being optimal with your training. Then it really, you're like, oh shit, okay, now I know what you're talking about. Because yeah, when I stopped training for 4 months, and not only did I stop training and let that go, I also let my diet go, like my nutrition. I was actually just eating whatever and whenever because I'm like, oh, if I'm not training, who really cares? So I literally gained like 10 or 13 pounds somewhere in there. So not only did I lose muscle, I gained 10 or 13 pounds on top of it. And it was not a very good look. It was really bad. But what was awesome though, is I remember when I started training again, it literally took me a month, and like strength was like even higher than it was prior. And my body just like, okay, there's the muscle. The only bad news was like, okay, now I got 10 pounds of body fat extra. So I think what's important, yeah, for some people, like right now, I think for me, like what I just mentioned, like maybe more of a big takeaway is like, yeah, we're kind of in darker times, but if you're letting go of, let's say, something that kind of keeps you grounded in life, whether it's bodybuilding or, hey, I need to run this cut, just keep me sane, or I'm contest prepping, I don't want to let go of it. I think that can be a rock. It's something to gravitate that's positive. And it kind of reminds me of like when I lost my job and got divorced and lost my house, went bankrupt, was like contest prep was actually something that kept me going. So for those people out there that kind of thinking like, shit, I kind of need something, then I say, why not? Hang on to it.
Yeah.
Hey, Berto, I wanted to ask you, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like for you, if you could expand on this subject a little bit, you seem to be like the least worried, and correct me if I'm wrong, but talk about it a little bit. You seem the least worried about digressing and
Regressing.
Exactly. You don't seem very concerned about it. Can you talk
Congressing.
about that a little bit?
Yeah, I was almost going to not train for a month. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be really sore and I'll backslide a bit. But when I come back, I'll feel really good, more so as an experiment more than anything else. See if it, maybe we can find the sweet spot with that, right? But again, big picture thinking, like, I'll probably be able to really assess that, like, say, in December and be like, okay, did that actually help? Did that help me get to wherever I'm at, or did it set me back? But with so many of my athletes like trying to figure things out. They're in a different stage of their bodybuilding. Like Jeff said, it's like with experience, like a lot of your insecurities kind of peace out a little bit. I'm like, you know what? I need to live that life with him, because it's like every time I prep, I feel that I'm like, okay, yeah. It's like this is probably good for me to do this every few years as a coach, because it puts you back in. It's very easy to just call the plays from the field, but to actually be in there and move that way, totally different. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna figure this out. I could be of more use to people, and it has already helped me, because shoot, like 30 minutes before I came here, there's just this angle going down my stairway where I'm like, oh man, like with BFR, like that's a good place to do triceps. So it's like I look at things differently now that I am training, whereas it would have been something where I was realistically going to going to just go to the park nearby, because it's super empty here. There's a basketball court there. I was going to try to shoot 500 shots a day, get a jump shot. And then my goal was going to be like, I'm going to go join the gym league over here. Because at this point, I am like a possession wide receiver. Like in terms of like being athletic on the field, no. But I could be the guy that shoots jump shots and hustles. So I was like, you know what? I'll do that. And then my summer will be a lot of fun. So that was my plan with this. Where I think I really learned this lesson. Learned it a few times in life, but I think the big one was in 2008, where I got hurt to the point where I thought bodybuilding was over, when I was like laying there in my room with my leg shaking, just spasming, wiggling. I couldn't move it. I couldn't walk for like 4 days. I was ready to let go of this and just move on to something else. And I was so excited about it, actually. Well, I had gotten to that point where I'm like, all right, like go, because I mean, prior to bodybuilding, I did other things that made me really happy. Like I didn't even know it existed. I wasn't deep into this world, and I had my own identity, or other things were part of my identity, and I was fishing for what I could do next. So not that I want to let go of this. I love this, but sometimes you learn a lot about yourself, and you get to appreciate new things when stuff kind of gets taken away from you. And I think a lot of people are going to come out with that perspective after this. It's not fun, but that's kind of the point, and we can make a positive out of this. But yeah, dude, I squatted 475 for a pause double, because I knew it was going to be my last training session for a while with weights.
Wow.
And I'm like, I need to send it. I need to send that thing. But yeah, no, I guess I'm at peace with the situation. But I'm glad that I am training, because I am more useful to my people that way. And like Jeff said, a big thing is like, hey, you're going to become your own little expert when it comes to this, and you're going to like figure stuff out as you go, and mess up a few things, and probably break a few things, but we'll figure it out, man.
I remember your training log on bodybuilding.com, how within a week you went from doing reps with 365 on squats, in damn near stage condition at like 170 or some shit, and deadlifting in the mid 400s for reps, to your log said 4 sets of 25 bodyweight squats. And damn it, if you weren't in a massive deficit because you hadn't really tracked before, and so the first time you really went there and you were losing like 2 to 3 pounds a week, and come when you got into contest condition in the high 150s, your quads were still the fucking strongest part of your body in terms of a physique development thing. So I think that experience probably has given you a lot of confidence now. And that's the benefit of not just imagining, but having been through some of these things. So this will not be a big deal for you if you can. It won't be a big deal for you the next time something like this happens in our lives, whether that's due to injury, the flood in where you live, God forbid, whatever, So I think this is a really good opportunity to build your resilience. I think one thing we've been talking about is two kind of themes, is moving from having an all or nothing black and white mindset to having, dimmer switches, and being able to operate in the best case scenario, given the reality, rather than the pie in the sky optimal. And then also having resilience versus control. And I think this is where a lot of bodybuilders get caught up. And it goes to the direction towards optimal and away from it. Like Jeff said, when he was a little more, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but a little more kind of black and white on and off switch. I got a new baby, not going to train for 4 months. And I think now he's been through that. If if you had a second child, which I know is not the plan at all.
I'd have to get a reverse vasectomy, and let's not.
I'm saying same boat.
I've
No
seen
thanks.
that. I've seen that surgery, and I don't even want to think about it. But anyways,
that's not one I won't even meditate on. But yeah, so like you would probably be able to train 1 or 2 times a week. You'd make the best of that scenario versus just going, hey, let's just take it off the table. And I think this is a great opportunity for that. And one of the things that's really important, a skill to develop in life and in bodybuilding, is to not take the standard approach to improving, to what we think is improving. Like a lot of bodybuilders that prep won't go as well as they like, and they think they need to get more hardcore. They need to go out less. They need to be more strict with their food. They need to weigh things to the gram. They need to track more, control more, and control their environment. And this results in them being more and more and more kind of self-quarantined during prep, But that pathway also erodes your resilience, like if you want to have a long career in this sport, you have to know when it's time to hibernate and lick your wounds and revitalize and get your emotions in control. And when it's time to push your boundaries and be uncomfortable, because the inappropriate balance of either one is problematic. If you're always making yourself uncomfortable, and if you're always pushing the boundaries, and if you're always trying to see, what can I do? How can I solve the world while I'm on prep? I can tell you, like my last prep, I traveled a little more than I probably would have liked to in hindsight. And, I was doing a lot of things in 2019. I'm really proud of myself for being able to do it. But I think there was probably some downsides to it. But the fact that I now know that I can go through a prep without really changing my life at all and deal with it, that's really powerful. And I think had I had the mindset I had in 07 or 08 and I went into this prep, I would have canceled all of my travel for the year. I wouldn't have taken on PhD students. I would have done less, and I would have been probably a worse human for it, to be honest. So it's that fine balance between not just staying inside of your comfort zone all the time and just slowly being unable to relate to the world and unable to react to the unexpected, which, as Brad pointed out, nothing is for sure. Man, you need to build that resilience and also know when to recover and heal. So that's that forever balance we talk about. People get twisted on the word balance, but man, balance is hard. You have to have balance to stay on a tightrope,
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy to pave over your whole life and make it a sidewalk and not have to worry about balance. The problem is you just paved over your whole life, right? So I think this is a great opportunity to figure out what that juxtaposition of those two extremes looks like. How do you get a dimmer switch? How do you make the current scenario as optimal as possible, knowing that it can't be optimal, and accepting that and getting away from that black and white mentality? So this is it's no longer a self-imposed thing that we ask people to do and ask our athletes to do. It's no longer a thought experiment. It's the reality for a lot of people. And I think there's some positives to that. It's not all just a shitty situation. It's also an opportunity for growth.
Eric, you're kind of delving into a lot of what we talked about in podcast 146, the 3DMJ powerlifting in 2020, when we talked a lot about how we overcame fears to do certain programming things, to think outside of our own, kind of self-imposed boxes, and how we really grew from those things. And we really learned a lot, from those things when we were kind of forced to do that. And I kind of feel like folks are getting a glimpse of what, kind of we talked about. They're forced, it's not like something they would want to do or something that they would just willingly do, right? Let's just give up our gym membership, stop going to the gym, lock ourselves in our homes and just see what we can come out with, right? It's not ideal, but, at the same time, it's a very extreme, but yet effective way of overcoming those fears, and to put a few minds at rest, I've had a few people that have kind of been forced to live this life that we're now being introduced to, in the last couple of days. And I mean, I have my hypotheses. But, you know, surprisingly, in folks that you can actually see the changes, so folks that are fairly lean, right? These approaches seem to be remarkably effective. You know, little subtle changes are being seen after like as little as like 18 to 21 days of this style of training, you know, and it does yield a lot of soreness. Because obviously with the intensity not being there, there's a lot of volume through repetitions that are having to happen. But I
new
think
movement
that
patterns too.
Say again.
And it's new movement patterns too, something you're unaccustomed to. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I think that people are going to find once they're on the other side of this that, oh, you know what? It's not all about volume and intensity and frequency and all of these programming things. You know, it's really got a lot to do with just getting at it, you know, and removing the lid on the container or thinking outside of the box, and knowing that there is more to it that we don't know yet.
Yeah, I can't remember if I'm pretty sure I said this to one of my athletes last week. And I've said this before, imagine taking a sandblaster and blasting all the numbers off the barbells and the dumbbells and say, okay, go to it. So in a sense, you're now, okay, you're not relying on any of the past, what you did in the past or what you're trying to do in the future. You're just like, I need to make this shit count right now. You need to actually feel and be present of what your training is actually feeling like. So in a sense, you become more aware of yourself in the moment while you're training. And I think that's pretty powerful. And I can say with confidence, that's kind of more or less where I've been the last few years with my training. Is like, I just kind of just know how my body feels, like what intensity I need, what volume I need, the recovery aspect. Like I've become so aware of myself because I've learned to let go of my attachment to like, okay, how much volume should I be doing, or how many sets or how many reps or whatever. So that's one thing I told one of my athletes, like, just imagine you're basically just sandblasting everything off your weights right now. And you're just going by feel in a sense.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
That's so valuable.
That's really cool. Yeah, because I'm just like, I'm envisioning myself, like if I was in that spot and kind of putting myself there, it'd be like, okay, I would just pick something up and I would say, oh, shit, that's too heavy. Let's take some of that weight off of there, you know? Or I would be like, I would start doing it and I'd be like, shit, I'm going to be here all day if I'm doing this. I probably better put some more weight on, you know? It kind of makes you realize the fundamentals of what weightlifting should really all be about. You know, I'm just kind of picturing myself in that environment. And it's like, it makes me realize, well, duh.
Yeah, this is like, it's not just making the best of a bad situation. I think we're going to come out of this on the other side with some new tools and new perspective, like increased self-awareness, knowing what it really feels like to go to failure, knowing what pain is versus a burn, knowing when you do have a few more reps, knowing how to change the angle and the tempo and everything to feel the muscle you're actually trying to train. Like all that interoceptive awareness that you're going to gain from this is going to stick with you as you move back to an objectively perhaps better training environment. But you'll also learn that some of the things that we assume are objectively better might not be. Like, I don't know if you guys noticed, but when you look at Berto's training, he does inverted rows even when there's no coronavirus. Just because we played with it that one time. I think we were in Texas and he was like, oh shit, I get a really good contraction on these. Yeah, and I don't know nobody who can do like more than 20 reps with an inverted row, like full extension and pull in.
No, if it's clean, no, yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things I had to do when I was traveling and then when I had a neck injury was just do the single leg calf raises with the pause at the bottom and going up. I do those all the time still, because what if I don't want to have 200, 300 pounds on my shoulders and actually load my spine? And I want to do some calf raises just with my body weight. Again, just adding reps in the 15 to 20 rep range. Pause at the bottom, just find, a cage, put my hands on either side, put my foot on the edge. Like, that's one of my favorite calf raise movements. And there's like multi-$100 machines out there that I could take or leave it now,
But it's interesting with calves. It's more the principle, not just talking about calf training. But remember when I tore my calf? I tore it with like 500 plus pounds on a Smith machine. And since then, I haven't even come nowhere near that type of loading, but yet my calves are still pretty jacked.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I was just gonna say that Eric's talking about the one movement that is a staple in the Godfather's calf training.
so, so it's just, I think a lot of people have this fear of like, okay, I'm not gonna be able to lift as heavy. I'm gonna lose muscle mass. And that, to me, again, it's like kind of what Berto said earlier about, just experience cures insecurity. Like I've gone through that experience and now I know, okay, that's kind of my own personal trial and error, not purposely, but it just happened. But now I know, okay, I don't need to have 500 pounds on a calf machine to make progress. There's other means to make progress or other ways. Same thing when I tore my upper pec doing heavy ass RDLs. Like both Eric and I were like, hey, let's go to hyperextensions now. And my hamstrings and glutes didn't go anywhere. If anything, I'm progressing just as much as I was before with a different movement. So there's definitely other ways to make progress besides just through loading. I know that's for a lot of people, there's a lot of insecurity with that right now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think, well, I hope it's helpful to hear that, but I think what will be even more helpful is when you look up in a few weeks and you're like, actually, my lats look pretty damn good right now. And I didn't shrink like I thought I would. So, yeah, I actually grew me some calves when I started committing to that. Because I remember I lost some calf development when I was on that pure Olympic lifting and powerlifting train. And then and the thing was like, man, like when you've done snatches, clean and jerk, squats, and deadlifts, and you have calf raises left, even me, as much as I love this stuff, it's easy to talk myself out of doing it as consistently as I should have. But when it's just like, hey, just go stand on that block, that all of a sudden the barrier to entry was a lot lower, and all of a sudden I started doing consistently, and I was like, hey, I just grew some very very below average calves that used to be even more below average. So hey, we're getting there. Well, hey, I think that's. I feel better. I hope the listeners do too. But let me just open the floor up. Anything else y'all want to say before we wrap this up?
Yeah.
No, just listening to you guys and talking has been really therapeutic. I feel like almost I've been carrying a bag of bricks around my neck like all week. And
another option to train, by the way, bag of bricks. Just put that out there.
But I kind of literally feel like I've kind of put them down.
I'm glad to hear it, brother.
Yeah, I think this is the second time we've talked about it, and it's good to hear it, that everyone's doing well, that everyone's, we've been better, but we're figuring things out. So yeah, this I hope this podcast helps people, and hearing you guys definitely helps me, and knowing that everyone's, we're as cool as we can be. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, my friends, just want to say I appreciate and I'm grateful for you all. For all the 3DMJers listening, thank you for tuning in. I hope we've provided some perspective that is helpful. And then in other stuff just to consider, as you guys know, this is almost our 150th podcast. They're free. We've got a ton of blog posts. They're free. And something like half of our vault courses are free. Because I do realize that a lot of people are not in a financial good position right now. Like more than half of our clients themselves are personal trainers. And if gyms are closed and if you're supposed to be self-isolated, and I know how it works as a trainer, I used to be one. If there's no client in front of you, there's no money in your pocket. So just know that you got free time and we've got free stuff. So definitely listen to the podcast episode you missed. Check out our free courses in the vault. Even our paid courses have sometimes up to like a third of them are free to watch. And, check out our blogs. We've got just a ton of content. We've got YouTube videos going back to 2011, believe it or not. I don't recommend watching some of the ones that were done in 2011. But if you want to learn about growth, perspective changes, and improved quality of both content and actual video quality, then feel free to watch 2011 all the way up to the present. But, yeah, Take advantage of all of that. It would be our true honor and pleasure to know that we've provided some learning in addition to some perspective to hopefully turn this scenario into emotional growth. And we will catch you next time on the 3DMJ podcast.